Wisdom had once been a respected bank manager, a man who lived a life of comfort and prestige. He had everything: a successful career, a loving family, a beautiful home, and luxury cars. His life seemed perfect, the epitome of success. He had built his life with hard work, and his future appeared to be full of promise. But all of that came crashing down in an instant. It all began on a seemingly normal Monday morning when Wisdom arrived at work to find something that would change his life forever: a termination letter sitting on his desk. The letter was short and to the point, informing him that he was being fired immediately. His mind raced as he tried to process what was happening. His accounts were frozen. His house, his cars, everything he had worked so hard for was seized by the bank. The once stable life he had built for himself was gone in the blink of an eye. Confusion and disbelief set in. How could this happen? He had always been diligent, honest, and committed to his work. The accusations were baseless, but the damage had been done. The whispers behind closed doors, the false claims that tarnished his reputation, made it impossible for him to stay in his position. His life, as he knew it, had been completely destroyed by rumors and lies. The sudden fall from grace left Wisdom feeling lost and broken. The shock of it all weighed heavily on him. He was forced to leave behind the life he had known, with no other choice but to find a way to survive. He took a job as a wheelbarrow pusher, something so far beneath his former status that it felt like a humiliation. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but he had no other option. The man who had once sat behind an executive desk, making decisions that impacted lives, now found himself trudging through dusty streets, pushing a wheelbarrow, carrying goods for meager pay. At home, things were just as bleak. His wife, Belinda, never missed a chance to criticize him for his inability to provide the luxurious lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. Her words were sharp, her anger fueled by her own disappointment. It hurt Wisdom deeply, but it was only the beginning of his heartbreak. What cut even deeper was the betrayal he would soon face when he walked into his brother Victor's house and found his wife in an intimate embrace with Victor. The man he had trusted, his own flesh and blood, had destroyed everything. For Wisdom, the life he once had seemed like a distant dream now gone forever, replaced by a harsh reality filled with pain and betrayal. His heart ached with every passing day, and the weight of his misfortune felt unbearable. As Wisdom struggled with his new reality, the pain of his fall from grace was only intensified by the constant reminders of what he had lost. At home, his wife Belinda made no effort to hide her disdain for him. Her once sweet words had turned bitter, laced with anger and frustration. She would curse him every day, accusing him of failing to provide the lavish lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. Her complaints echoed through their once peaceful home, each word a sharp reminder of how far he had fallen. Every day, she would call him worthless, mocking the man who had once been her provider. But it wasn't just her words that tore him apart, it was the betrayal that followed. When Wisdom reached out to his younger brother, Victor, hoping for a bit of support, he walked into a scene that shattered him completely. There, in Victor's bedroom, was Belinda, his wife, in an intimate embrace with his own brother. The sight was unbearable. Wisdom's heart broke in that moment as he realized the depth of the betrayal. The two people he had trusted most in the world had turned against him, leaving him to suffer alone. Instead of feeling remorse or shame, Victor reacted with coldness, even sneering at Wisdom as he stood there, devastated. "Get out, lazy man!" Victor spat, dismissing him as if he were nothing. His brother showed no remorse for the pain he had caused. To Wisdom's horror, the affair wasn't just an isolated incident. Victor had betrayed him for a life of luxury, using Belinda to climb the social ladder. Belinda, too, showed no sign of guilt. She abandoned their two sons, leaving them behind without a second thought to chase the materialistic dream that had now become her obsession. The once vibrant laughter of his children, Emmanuel and David, faded into silence. The two boys, who had once filled the house with joy, now went to bed hungry more often than not. The strain of it all, both emotionally and financially, began to take its toll on Wisdom. His children were sent home from school for unpaid fees, and his landlord threatened eviction when he couldn't pay the rent. Wisdom knew he was at his breaking point. In desperation, he swallowed his pride and went back to Victor's house, hoping for a shred of mercy. But what he received was nothing short of cruelty. Victor mocked him once again, flaunting his newfound wealth and power in front of Wisdom, while Belinda rolled her eyes dismissively at his presence. Victor shoved more money into her hands and callously dismissed Wisdom from their lives for good. That night, as Wisdom returned to his humble dwelling, heartbroken and betrayed, he was left with nothing. No family, no wealth, no dignity, and yet, little did he know, this was just the beginning of the darkest chapter of his life. As Wisdom's life sank deeper into despair, he found himself questioning everything. The weight of betrayal, loss, and humiliation seemed unbearable, but something inside him refused to let go. While pushing his wheelbarrow day in and day out, scraping together a meager living, Wisdom began to overhear whispers of Victor's newfound wealth. He had heard rumors before, but they now seemed to point to something darker, something that connected his brother's rise to his own downfall. One day, as Wisdom passed through the market, two traders were gossiping about Victor's lavish new lifestyle. "Did you hear how Victor built a mansion in just 6 months?" one man said, his voice low but filled with awe. "And he's driving the latest cars too. It's like he came out of nowhere." The other trader leaned in, lowering his voice further. "I heard he made his fortune through dark means." The words sent a chill through Wisdom's spine. He had always wondered how Victor, a struggling student not long ago, had suddenly amassed so much wealth. Could there be any truth to these rumors? The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Victor's rapid ascent wasn't just luck, it had to be something far more sinister. That night, as he lay in his small, dimly lit room, Wisdom replayed everything in his mind: the betrayal, the sudden wealth, the arrogance. Something didn't add up, and he couldn't let it go. He couldn't just sit back and accept that Victor had destroyed his life without knowing the truth. The next morning, driven by a mix of rage and desperation, Wisdom decided he would confront Victor. Not for money, but for answers. He had to know how and why his life had fallen apart the moment his brother's life seemed to flourish. He wasn't going to let Victor's cruelty remain unchallenged. When Wisdom arrived at Victor's mansion, he was stopped by two imposing security guards. They looked him over with disdain before one of them spoke coldly. "What do you want?" Wisdom's voice trembled as he responded, "I'm his brother." "I need to see Victor." The guards exchanged glances, then told him to wait. Victor appeared moments later, dressed in a designer suit, his face twisted into a mocking smile. "What do you want now?" he sneered. Wisdom's heart pounded in his chest, but he steadied himself. "I need the truth," he said, his voice shaky but firm. "What did you do to become so wealthy? Why did my life fall apart the moment yours improved?" Victor's expression darkened. His smile faded as he leaned in close, his voice cold and calculated. "Life is about survival," he said. "Some of us are willing to do whatever it takes to rise above the rest. And for me, that meant sacrificing you." The words hit Wisdom like a punch to the gut. He staggered back, his mind reeling as Victor's confession sank in. "You sacrificed me," Wisdom whispered, barely able to comprehend what he had just heard. Victor didn't flinch. "You always had everything handed to you: beautiful family, respect. It was my turn to shine." Wisdom stood there, unable to move as the world around him crumbled once more. As Wisdom stood there, reeling from his brother's cold, calculating confession, the weight of Victor's betrayal became all too clear. The words echoed in his mind. "I sacrificed you." It was a betrayal of the highest order, one that ripped apart the very core of Wisdom's existence. Victor, the younger brother he had loved and trusted, had chosen to destroy him in order to gain wealth and power. What had once seemed like a simple downfall now appeared as part of a much darker plan. Victor's rise to riches wasn't a result of hard work or good fortune. It was a result of a malevolent choice. He had joined a secretive cult, one that promised power, money, and influence, in exchange for a dark and terrible price. Wisdom's life, his family, his dignity, these were the sacrifices that had allowed Victor to rise above everyone else. In that moment, Wisdom understood that his life had never been his own, that his destiny had been stolen, all so his brother could have everything he had ever desired. The pain of the revelation was unbearable. Wisdom staggered back, his breath catching in his throat as he processed what Victor had just said. The man standing before him, who once had been his closest family, had orchestrated his fall from grace as part of a twisted pact with forces beyond comprehension. What was worse was Victor's utter lack of remorse. There was no regret, no apology in his voice, only cold indifference. "Do you think I care about your life?" Victor sneered. "I've got everything I ever wanted. Your suffering is just a small price to pay for my success." The arrogance in his voice was chilling. Wisdom's mind raced, struggling to comprehend how his brother could be so heartless. His anger swelled, mixing with the deep sadness that threatened to consume him. His children were gone, his family torn apart, and here stood the man responsible, bragging about his success. Victor, without a hint of shame, continued, "You always had everything handed to you. Good job, beautiful family, respect. It was my turn to shine." The venom in his words stung Wisdom to his core. There, standing in Victor's lavish mansion, Wisdom realized that the man he had once called his brother was nothing more than a monster. This was no longer just about losing his job or his home, it was about losing everything he had ever believed in. Victor had destroyed him, not just for material gain, but out of pure, unadulterated greed. But even as the full extent of Victor's betrayal sank in, a new feeling stirred in Wisdom, a deep, burning rage. This was not how his story would end. He wasn't going to let Victor's actions define his future. He had already lost so much, but he still had something left, his will to fight back. His journey wasn't over, not yet. In the weeks that followed the painful confrontation with Victor, Wisdom was consumed by an overwhelming sense of loss. He had been stripped of everything: his job, his dignity, his family, and now, even his sense of self-worth felt fragile and distant. But as he struggled to push his wheelbarrow through the dusty streets, scraping together meager earnings, something unexpected happened. A chance encounter with a stranger would change the course of his life forever. It was an ordinary day when Wisdom helped an elderly man who was being harassed by a group of rowdy teenagers. The boys had surrounded him, taunting him, trying to steal his bag. Without thinking, Wisdom rushed to the man's defense. He picked up a stick and swung it at the boys, chasing them away before they could do any harm. The elderly man, visibly shaken but unharmed, looked at Wisdom with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, my son," he said, his voice trembling. "You saved me. May God bless you." Wisdom, though exhausted and still burdened by his own pain, smiled faintly. He had done what he believed anyone should have done in that situation, helping another human being in need. The elderly man introduced himself as Chief Wellington, the CEO of Wellington's Estate and Wellington's Bank Limited. Wisdom's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of Chief Wellington. He was a man of great influence, known throughout the city for his success and generosity. Chief Wellington could see something in Wisdom that many others might have missed. Despite his worn clothes and the exhaustion in his eyes, the elderly man saw integrity, bravery, and kindness. Wisdom wasn't just a man down on his luck, he was someone with potential. Chief Wellington handed Wisdom a business card, inviting him to his home the following weekend. "I want to get to know you better," he said warmly. "You've earned my respect today, and I believe I can help you." For the first time in a long while, a flicker of hope ignited within Wisdom. It felt like a miracle, an unexpected blessing that he could hardly believe. He had spent so many sleepless nights wondering if his life would ever improve, and now this was an opportunity. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a lifeline. Chief Wellington had seen something in him, and that was enough to reignite the spark of belief that had long been extinguished. That evening, as Wisdom held the card in his hand, he whispered a prayer of gratitude. "Thank you, Lord," he said softly. "Thank you for sending this man into my life." He knew that this could be the breakthrough he had been praying for. The days of suffering were not over, but now at least there was a glimmer of light in the darkness. As Wisdom walked through the doors of Chief Wellington's mansion, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The grandiosity of it all, polished marble floors, towering chandeliers, and luxurious furniture, was so far removed from the life he had been living just weeks before. He had spent so many days pushing his wheelbarrow through the streets, wondering if anything could ever change for him. And now, here he was, standing in the home of one of the most influential men in the city. It was surreal. Chief Wellington greeted him warmly, as if he had been expecting him all along. Wisdom felt a mix of nervousness and gratitude as he entered the mansion, unsure of what to expect. The old man had been kind to him after he had intervened to protect him from the group of bullies, and now this invitation to his home felt like an answer to the prayers Wisdom had whispered during his darkest moments. They sat down to a meal. Wisdom could barely contain his emotions as he ate the food before him. It was more than just nourishment. It was a symbol of the opportunity he had been given. For so long, he had barely been able to afford a proper meal. Now, He was sitting in the comfort of a wealthy man's home, being treated with kindness and respect. It was a humbling experience. As they ate, Chief Wellington spoke of his own life, of the struggles he had faced when he was younger, when he was just as poor as Wisdom. The old man revealed that he had not always been wealthy, and that there was a time when he had nothing, just like Wisdom. But unlike most, he had been given a chance and opportunity that had transformed his life. Chief Wellington was quick to say that he wanted to give Wisdom the same kind of chance. "You remind me of myself when I was your age, Chief," Wellington said, his eyes softening. "I see potential in you, Wisdom. You're a good man, and I believe you can do great things. I want to offer you a position at one of my banks. You've earned it." Wisdom froze. The words were too good to be true. A job at a prestigious bank, it was more than he could have ever dreamed of. His heart raced as the reality of what was happening began to sink in. This wasn't just a lifeline, it was a complete transformation. "I don't know what to say, sir," Wisdom said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Chief Wellington placed a hand on Wisdom's shoulder. "There's no need to thank me," he said. "You've already proven yourself. Now it's time for you to rise again." As Wisdom left Chief Wellington's mansion later that evening, he felt a renewed sense of hope. For the first time in a long while, he believed in his future again. It wasn't just the job that gave him hope, it was the chance to rebuild, to start over, and to prove that even the most broken can rise. As the days passed, Wisdom's life continued to transform in ways he never could have imagined. His new job at Chief Wellington's bank became the foundation upon which he would rebuild his entire future. For the first time in a long while, he woke up with purpose, knowing that each day brought him closer to healing the wounds of his past. His heart swelled with gratitude for the kindness Chief Wellington had shown him, and for the chance to prove that he wasn't defined by his failures. But the journey didn't come without its challenges. Wisdom still struggled with the memories of betrayal, his brother Victor's callous actions, the painful loss of his children, and the cruelty he had endured. There were moments when the weight of those memories threatened to drag him back into the darkness. But Wisdom had learned something valuable during his time on the streets. The greatest strength isn't just in surviving adversity, it's in how we rise after it. Wisdom's rise from the depths of despair wasn't just about the money, the job, or the respect he had regained. It was about reclaiming his dignity, his sense of self, and his belief in the goodness of others. He began to see the world differently, no longer as a place of endless struggle, but as a realm full of possibilities for those willing to fight for what is right. His relationship with Isabella, Chief Wellington's daughter, blossomed naturally as they spent more time together. She admired his perseverance and kind heart, and he found comfort in her presence. Their connection deepened, and they both knew that this was the beginning of something special. As they prepared for their wedding, Wisdom was overwhelmed with emotion, not just for the love he had found, but for the family he was about to create, something he had feared he would never have again. On the day of their wedding, Wisdom stood with Isabella, his heart full of joy and gratitude. They exchanged vows, not just as a promise to each other, but as a testament to the resilience that had brought them together. For Wisdom, the journey from the depths of despair to this moment was a miracle. He had not only survived it, had made him stronger. This story, though fictional, mirrors the lives of many who face overwhelming adversity and despair. It teaches us that no matter how hard life gets, how much we may lose, or how deeply we are betrayed, there is always the possibility of rising again. It's not the hardships that define us, but the strength we summon to overcome them. The key is never to give up, no matter how many times life knocks us down. In the end, it's our ability to persevere, to trust in a brighter future, and to find strength in the love and kindness of others that ultimately determines our success. Wisdom's story is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to turn the page and start a new chapter. It may not be easy, but if we keep faith in ourselves and in the support of those who truly care, we can overcome anything.